I mean, everybody gets into their career for a certain purpose. And I went through a lot as a child. I was in the foster care system, and I went through a lot of struggles. And for me, going into nursing was a way to give back and to help people in forensic nursing, especially sexual assault nursing, to be able to give back and to help advocate for these victims of violence in a nursing capacity. And my biological family, my father was a leader of a gang, a very prominent one. And my biological brother was murdered when I was 13 years old. And they had always wanted me to go to law school to be a lawyer so that I can get them out of trouble as a criminal defense attorney. And so in honor of my brother, I looked at law school and I said, I don't want to go to law school, but I do enjoy the legal aspect of it, the CSI, all of that. And so I looked into forensics, and forensic nursing was where I could do both. I could be a forensic nurse. I could do the health aspect, the diagnosis and treatment of my patients, as well as advocate in the legal side and be able to bring that science to the courtroom. Instead of just strictly being law, I can do both. So that's how I kind of got into forensic nursing.
Let's talk about your work in human trafficking.
Human trafficking is near and dear to my heart because when I was in the foster care system, I did become a statistic of being a runaway youth at 15 and clicking on a link online with somebody offering me a better future. And unfortunately, I fell into that statistic of the foster care pipeline to sex trafficking. And not only was I exploited in that, but I had to go through years of healing to even come out of that. And fortunately, I was in the small statistic that makes it out. But the passion that I have comes for the girls that I left that are still in the life. And so I started working undercover with law enforcement, giving them tips and tricks on what they missed. Anytime there's any major event in any city, girls are transferred to different circuits and they're brought in by the busloads for Super Bowl, for auto shows, any main events. So I've helped law enforcement, place ads on different websites that's known for that sexual activity in the cities and help them with knowing the terms to put in there on how to, word it so that they don't think it's an officer, and just kind of helping them build out the, when they do their stings, building it out online virtually, as well as multidisciplinary approaches, bringing healthcare and advocates to the scene when they do the sting to make sure that it's not just a law enforcement officer that's, extracting them from the life, but that they have an advocate down in the next hotel room that's there to comfort them, because law enforcement used to make arrests, right? And so they'd arrest these 16-year-olds and put them in juvie, and arrest a 19-year-old for prostitution before they understood what trafficking was, and that women are not prostitutes, they're being prostituted, and that's something that's happening to them. So just being able to be on scene during that to make sure that things are done right and fair to the victims. I'll go undercover as an escort, and I'll go in and target the traffickers and go to their VIP service tables and their bottle service, and find out when they're going to take their next trip to Aspen, and I'll befriend the girls. And I have a fake Instagram account that I'll follow them, and I'll just kind of keep tabs on what they're doing, where they're going, and just kind of build a case out and help with law enforcement. There's a lot of people who always say, oh, that doesn't happen here. That's not in my neighborhood. And unfortunately, it happens everywhere. I mean, crime, sexual assault happens everywhere. It's getting the parents to understand why we need to have these talks with our children about this, because they're trying to protect their children from hearing these dirty words and to not want them to be exposed to that, but they're being exposed. They have a cell phone in their hands. That's a gateway into a million apps. A calculator you click on takes you into a chat room. They're talking to pedophiles. The parents just don't know. And so the parents need to be educated. The schools need to be educated to understand why they need to allow this training into their schools. And so we need change agents in every city all across the country. People need to advocate for their own counties and say, hey, can we bring someone into our school to educate our kids? Because it's the kids that it's happening to, but the parents don't want the kids to hear it, and the principals have all this red tape up that they don't want people in their schools talking about it. So if we can curb it at the demand where it starts and get these kids educated, then that's huge. But it's also, the abusers, the predators, and with sex trafficking, it's predominantly males, just like in sexual abuse, or rape, it's predominantly, it happens, both can be the abuser, but it's predominantly males. And so I know Dr. Schmuck has said it, that testosterone is the most deadly weapon. And so just to get to the men and the demand, and to have them understand and educated on the story behind the girl that they think is just there willingly, and her true age, and to get them educated to understand, that's crucial and that's key, and it's not happening as much as it needs to.
How did this all begin for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. And I think not only does it get forgotten, but people don't even think about it, to be honest. When they see a shooting, a death scene, they don't ever think about what's left. So back in 1995, I was working as a paramedic, and I was on an ambulance then before I even got hired on the fire department, but we covered some pretty bad areas. So we'd get a lot of traumas, a lot of shootings, a lot of just bloody things that would happen. And I always felt bad for the families or the business owner, whoever was going to be left to clean up that mess. Because honestly, I think until the last police officer, coroner, whoever's last to leave, the person doesn't even think about that. And then they're in such a tragic state already, imagining them having to get on their hands and knees, get on a ladder in some cases to clean up what's left of their loved one. I mean, you can't screw a person up any more than that. And it really bothered me. One night I went on one that was just horrific, and I felt so bad for this wife that's the night I went home and said to my wife, I'm going to start cleaning up. I don't know if there's a business model here, but I have to give these people another choice.
So Cory, I want you to walk through, the whole process of when you arrive on a scene, and the difference in the different types of cases, because it differs between stabbings and shootings and suicides and natural deaths. Usually
with a shooting, you're going to have a puddle of blood, and that's what you're going to deal with. In a stabbing, you don't just sit there and get stabbed over and over and just say, "Oh, stop." You're fighting for your life, you're running, so these are usually scenes that are spread out over very large areas, like the picture on the right. Every single room in this home was affected because that's where the fight ensued throughout the house. So when we get a stabbing call, we know it's going to be a much longer scene and we're going to need more manpower there. Gruesome as this is, when we get a call for a shotgun or a high caliber rifle, we know it's going to be a very horrific scene like this. It goes everywhere. In a case like this one, it was open to the kitchen. So then it went all out through the kitchen. So these are a lot of work. So another, call that we get quite often, our most common calls are suicide and decomposition. Unfortunately, we have a pretty large population throughout the US that lives alone. And so they die alone. And when they're not found for anything over about 48 hours, the body does start to break down and decompose. And it might not look that bad on the surface like this one, but as you can see, those are linoleum squares there. And so all those seams, the fluids will go right underneath. So we can't just clean the surface. As you can see, this is what we found underneath the floor. And this is all absorbed into the subfloor. This linoleum floor, it's a solid sheet linoleum. There wasn't a lot of pooling against the sides. It was easily cleaned. And I know one of your questions was, what tools do we use to show if there's blood left behind? And I'll show you that, because that's what we use when we get to this step on the right side. We want to make sure that we got all the blood. So we actually do use an illuminator. We don't use luminol. Luminol is actually like a paint, and that's what reacts with the black light and stuff. They look for small traces of blood. So we can't use that because we don't want to go around and paint the whole house. But we use illuminator, and you can kind of see it on the right side there. It's really hard to see blood on a black or even like a burgundy or dark surface. So we spray this illuminator, it turns bright white. Have you ever uncovered evidence that was missing, or did you find new evidence when you guys were cleaning? Yeah, that is actually pretty common. I mean, it doesn't happen every day by any means, but we've actually gone to a job where the CSI people left every single bag, all marked and everything, in the house and forgot to take them. So we had to call them up and say, guys, you might want this. So, but we find things like this all the time, like, fingers and evidence markers they left behind. We'll find bullets quite often like this. And as soon as we find this, we just have to stop. A lot of times they're under the carpet or something where they wouldn't have seen it. And then the fingerprint dust is something that is always left for us to clean. Tear gas. So a lot of things are left behind, some purposely and some not purposely, that we have to deal with. Typically, how long does a cleanup last? And I know it varies between stabbing, shooting, decomp, whatever, but if you can kind of give us a ballpark pending the means. Right. Yeah, so like that shotgun suicide that I showed you, I think that one took a crew of 3 or 4 people like 8 hours. If we go on one that's just a puddle in the middle of a floor that we don't have to cut anything out, we can be done in 20 minutes. Most of our roadway stuff that we do, the traffic accidents and that stuff, because of that equipment we have, I mean, most of those, if the body wasn't dragged a mile or something, we can be done in about a half an hour. I would say an average for a crime scene would probably be 3 to 4 hours from the time we arrive to the time we're actually done, and not like a decomposition where we're taking out a lot of flooring. We have to come back the next day and air it out and turn the machines off. But just an average blood biohazard cleanup, probably 3 4 hours.
Takes me 3 hours just to dust my house. Never mind clean up a crime scene.
Well, I hope your dust is never blood then, because it'll take even longer.
What is the one message you never want lost?
Just why we do what we do, and that's to prevent people from having to do it. A family member is 75% more likely to kill themselves after cleaning up a loved one. And that's a huge number. And I was going to show a picture that, when you talk about memorable, but I just, out of respect for the family, I never show this picture, but it haunts me. So her son killed himself in the bathroom of his home, and it was horrific. So it was a shotgun. We were there literally gutting this whole bathroom the entire day. And about 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, we get a call that the mom killed herself at her home because of this in her bathroom. And the picture that our guys sent me is of her little vanity, a normal, just single sink, covered in blood. And there was a butcher knife, a regular kitchen knife, scissors. She had every tool laid out, like, how the hell am I going to do it? I'm going to do it. I don't know how. So she had like this little operating thing set up, and it just it breaks your heart. Knowing that, she was just in so much pain losing her son and what she saw, that she went home and she had no plans to do that day, but because of that. So we do play things like that in our training to remind our franchise owners and all employees the difference that you're making in people's lives. You're saving them. You really are, from having to do something very horrific.
What was the deciding factor for you to finally, for you to go out of retirement and get back to work?
Mainly this case. I had 2 cases, mainly. It's something I'll probably live with to the day I close my eyes. I pray for the families that these cases be solved. I wish I could solve everyone. I wish I could live long enough to solve any case I could. But I know you can only do so much. And sometime in life, some go unsolved. But that's hard for me to deal with. I hate to see a case put on a shelf, because it's not just a case. It's someone's loved one. And to me, I think about if that was my family, I'd be up there every day. Hey, Rodie, get off your butt and go solve this case. This is my child.
You're 33 years. Do you have any regrets?
Oh, yes, Kelly. I have a lot of regrets as far as my children. We was talking about me and my son, and if you watch the show, my son was telling me, and that none of the show was scripted. It was all shot up front. And the moment we had in my backyard, when he looked at me and he said, "Hey, Dad," it still hurts. He said, "I wish you'd been a good as father as you were a cop." Excuse me. I do. I've always said I got 2 kids. Matter of fact, my daughter's birthday was yesterday. She turned 30 years old. My biggest regret, not spending the time I should have been with them.
Well, these cases become your family, don't they? They become your loved ones, because a lot of times they don't have people fighting for them. You're the one that has to fight for them.
Well, it's like I told my son, I didn't forget about y'all. I just done what was more important to me at that particular time. And I was doing something that if something would have happened to y'all, I would have wanted someone like me to work y'all case. And now he understands. We got a pretty good relationship now. We do, me, my daughter, and him. And that's my biggest regrets.
Will there be a time, do you think, that you will start to work some other cold cases as an outside consultant? Not necessarily for Iberville Parish, but, you know, maybe other states and other sheriff's departments?
I sure hope so, Kelly. I'd love to. I have, when I was with the department, I worked with East Baton Rouge and other parishes on their cases. I would love to do that, as long as my health stays in good. And let me tell you, if I can help in any kind of way, like I told you, to help anyone find or just not solve it, but help them do anything for their loved one that's been taken from them, man, here I am. Come get me. I'm ready to go. I mean, my arms is my mind, and I just feel that in this time and in this world, no case should be unsolved.